Welcome to Monday Night Live. Sorry we've had a couple of weeks off, but we're back on now. I got a few weeks in a row now, so we're not going to be running away, either playing golf or having bank holidays. So yeah, got to say 3 or 4 weeks in, bank holiday end of August, and that's us through till Christmas. So the fire questions in as usual, and great to have you all on board. Interesting kind of weekend. If we're going briefly to the tours this week, Ryan Henny winning out in the States playoff. Interesting course, Colonial, a course that really suits the ball striker, the player that kind of picks his way around, and you're coming in birding the last 3 holes and then the playoff again. I mean, really, really impressive finish. And someone who's kind of, I don't know, I don't really see him particularly as a top 5 in the world player. Like Ryder Cup last year, you know, that world ranking seemed a little bit, I thought it was a little bit generous, but then again, when he comes and produces that kind of performance, very, very impressive. DP World Tour, the young Japanese chap Kaneko, he came through and won. Played beautifully all week. Nice to see Andrew Johnson, Beef Johnson, up there again. He's had his struggles over the years. It's really nice to see one of the good guys back up there. A bit like, you know, a friend of PG's, Jordan Smith. You know, had a good couple of days out in the States, leading after round 2. Didn't quite follow up at the weekend, but he's clearly getting more and more comfortable out on the tour there. So it'd be great to see him, you know, up in one of the big tournaments and see if he can get it finished off soon. Yeah, so that's pretty much tour golf. Celine Boutier won our LPGA tour. So another win for her, Solheim Cup player, coming into form with Solheim Cup year next year. Leonie Maguire up there as well, and another Irish girl did well too. So, you know, good week for the Brits. Right, I think, seeing as we've had a couple of weeks off, let's get straight onto the questions. So, let's fire this up. Right, thank you to those already on. And let's start with Golf Nerd 3. Do you find 2023 T100Rs to be draw biased? Find it much harder to fade them versus drawing. Check lie angles already. How does the 25 version compare? It's not a head I would say is draw biased at all. You know, the T100Rs as a model are very much a kind of a player's head. So, for example, whilst there is a bit of tungsten heel and toe, both on the 23 model and the 25, it's not something I would say is a particularly draw-biased head. Now, 25 model to the 23, there is more tungsten in the heel and toe. They have spread a bit more weight out there, so I would say it feels a little bit more stable. But it's certainly not a head that I would say is draw-biased. So there's clearly something going on there. Could be technique, could be from a kind of a shaft setup or weight setup point of view, if that's getting the club kind of dropping underneath and creating a pattern that chases through and a closing face through impact. That is going to be what's doing it. Head design, T100Rs, I can't see doing that, either the 23 or the 25. But in principle, 25's a little better off centre. We're seeing slightly better ball speeds off them as well. But I wouldn't call it a draw bias head, no. Papa B3272, hello young man, good evening to you. Lately I've heard comments on how shafts don't spin, heads do. I'm confused because many shafts are marketed as low spin. Could you please give your thoughts? You're the best, it's very kind of you. So shafts can be and are higher launch, you know, softer tip, for example, higher launch, higher spin, more torque. They will impart a little bit more deflection and therefore will hit a slightly higher ball flight. Equally speaking, you can stabilize a tip, you can bring the kick points up, you can make them lower launching, lower spinning, higher launching, higher spinning. But as a tool for altering ball flight, head style and loft is going to override anything the shaft can do tenfold. So you might use the shaft to really dial it in and fine tune a couple of 100 revs here and there, but all else being equal, i.e., and what I mean by that is the way the shaft sets up, if that doesn't change the way that the player delivers it, because different weights and balance points will change that delivery pattern, purely on bend profile and flex alone, you're not going to see transformational changes in ball flight, or it is incredibly unlikely to, because if you think all you're relying on, let me just grab a club here to show this, all you're relying on is from the shaft, you're relying on that little bit more or less bend that way or that way, well, essentially forward through impact. You're relying on a little less curvature of the shaft or a less aggressive curvature of the shaft down the bottom to give more or less height. So ultimately, changing the loft by 1 or 2 degrees, changing the head style so the CG shifts in the head, that's going to have a much more direct effect on your ball flight. So it wouldn't be something where I wouldn't be using the shaft to try and really knock the flight down or really kick the ball up, or I wouldn't be expecting it to, but I would use head style to do that. So that, I think, is where shafts don't spin, heads do. They do, but as a kind of significant, there's a fancy word that I was going to use, but I can't remember what it was. As a significant factor in changing that element of performance, head will do it more than shaft, but the shaft can still do it, just to a lesser extent. Elbeniak 11, hi Simon, I've been really struggling with my QI4D with the Ventus Blue Plus 6TX. I swing up to 120, but tend to miss it starting right, going right. 45 inches, 13 gram heel and 9 gram toe, 6 in the back. So it depends what swing weight it's at that length. So the new, actually the Ventus Blue, sorry, not the TR. I was going to say if it was the TR swings a little bit more tip heavy. So I would say that chance that it's not going to be a stiffness thing. It depends what swing weight it's at, I would say, but the Ventus Blue Plus is not an overly tip heavy shaft. Actually, first gen was a little bit more tip heavy. So it's going to be something to do with, again, sort of how the head is arriving for you, how that timing, that sinking is. It may be that you require, this is going to sound like I'm really hedging my bets, but for some players, a more tip heavy setup drops the club in more and allows you to square it through a little bit more. For others, a slightly higher balance, counterbalance setup achieves the same thing. Depending on your patterns, one will help you square the face a little bit better. It could be that the head style is absolutely spot on, and it could be that actually the shaft is absolutely spot on, but depending how they're built, if that combination isn't right, I haven't actually said I don't know what grip you've got as well. So depending on what grip you play, you could be adjusting the dead weight of the club by 10, 15, 20 grams, depending on the grip type. So there are lots of layers to it. So in order to be 100% certain, I'd need to know all the other layers to it. And then the follow-up question, would 1K black be any better for me? Honest answer is I don't know. It might be. It's certainly, the 1K black swings a little bit more tip heavy. It's designed about being tip stiff and lower launch, lower spin. Certainly, it's a couple of grams. It's a similar weight, maybe 1 or 2 grams heavier, but it swings more towards the tip. Could it be better? Maybe. Honest answer, but I don't know for certain. And I'll just jump to, there's another follow-up. I could also put the 9 in the back heel to help closure. It actually doesn't really help the closure that much. Ultimately, what the weights do heel and toe, much like on the Titleist heads, that track, sliding track, it's more about strike point and gearing. So if your miss is in the heel side, put the weights in the heel, because then you don't get that deflection. If you have the weights in the toe, it's the weak spot. The head gears more and you get more spin, more side spin. So you're moving CG behind the contact point to minimize any gear effect. Moving the 9 grams into the heel and the 4 grams into the toe, you're not massively changing that rotation rate. You're possibly going to make as much, if not more of a difference to that by having the weights forward or back. But don't look at toe and heel as draw and fade bias from a kind of face open and closure rate point of view. Technically, there's a very small difference, but you're looking at that at CG position and minimizing. So if your strike's out the toe, you move the heavy weight into the toe to move the center of gravity towards the toe, so you're minimizing that gearing, that knuckle, and the same for the heel side. So look at it more that way. Philly Central, evening all. Currently gaming TS3 driver. Any of the latest releases worth the 600 plus outlay for a 10 handicap weekend warrior? Honest answer is possibly. I think what you are going to see versus TS3, and I've certainly seen relative to my TSR3, is out the middle it's still a great head, but off center, the GTS series, the QI4D, monumentally more stable. So spin retention is better, ball speed retention is a little bit better, but the spin fluctuations are definitely less. Is it worth it? Ultimately, it depends how much benefit you see and then what your idea of value is. For some players, just anything that's longer or anything that's slightly improved because they want a new toy equals value. I certainly generally don't change my club unless I'm seeing a tangible difference. So whether it's spin consistency, really kind of dropping from, say, tolerance of 350, 400 revs to 250, because that's going to have an impact on my front back dispersion. I would want to see 5 to 7 yards to make it worth making a change, and that's for me, and it's tax deductible. But I think if you're paying out not an insignificant amount of money, then for a lot of players, they might say it's a club, 10 yards or so. If you're getting 10 yards, that's a club less into the greens. If you're seeing much less gearing and straighter shots alongside a kind of 5 to 10 yard gain, ultimately it's your call as to whether that's value. But I think you are going to find better performing heads off centre. That certainly. Richard Skinner, can you test the Mitsubishi Blue board shaft versus the Araterra Blue in a Callaway Triple Diamond Max head and describe the differences between the shafts? I will do that. I'll just do the next question first, seeing as we're on woods. And Polo 1928 has asked me, what are you using for woods this season? So I'll quickly do that one. So currently, this one's clinging onto my bag, but I am considering a change. So I have Titleist TSR3 in the 8 degree. I've got it lofted up into the C4 position, so it's 1 notch up and flatter. And I've got the VA Composites, the Sinister 65 in a stiff flex. Which way do you want it? Lower, higher? And I play the stiff. Actually, for where my speed is now, almost irregular. But the balance point changes as you go into the X. It gets a little bit higher up. So I play this because it's 64 grams. If I go heavier than that, it drops behind me. Balance down the bottom. D3 swing weight and 44 7/8 length. I've then got Kyoshi Purple 75 stiff in both fairway woods, and I play a 3 wood and 5 wood in the Paradigm Triple Diamonds. So I'm mainly using 3 wood off the tee. It is something that I've looked at these heads. I've enjoyed the 5 wood more than I thought, I must say. I haven't played one of those a lot ever before this last year or so, and have actually enjoyed playing that. I've considered changing the 3 wood head to make it a better fairway wood, but because most of the time I'm using it off the tee and it's been such a reliable club, I haven't changed it. But a lot of the heads now, I find actually the Triple Diamond isn't that low spin relative to launch angle. So it's something I use off the tee a lot. I could get a more forgiving head off the deck, but I really like the way it plays. So I'm kind of it's still clinging on. But driver wise, I'm considering there's one of the Derrimax shafts, the CX in the 6, which is 61 grams. It's a couple of grams lighter, which now I'm middle-aged and getting slower, I can help just potentially gain a little bit of speed, and then the off-center performance of the new heads likely to be GTS 3 or QI4D, but I will be doing some form of fitting video on that in the coming weeks. I'm not sure exactly when, but interested to see whether I can gain on that. But even though the driver's been brilliant the last couple of years, I think I might be changing it. But let me get those components. I'll be back in 2 secs. What are we? Triple Diamond. I'm sorry, let's make sure I get the components. Blue board, I'll get the 63 in the Araterra Blue and the 65 Triple Diamond Max. Right, back in 2 ticks. Those, and I'll just get the blue board from around the other side. So slight difference between the 2 shafts is that, oh, I need a Callaway sleeve as well, is that the, so I need to get an adapter for this, is that the Araterra is a little bit heavier. Blue boards are sort of 62, 3 gram, the Araterra is more like 66. Mark, can you grab me a Callaway driver adapter, just because the one that was in here died. So, thank you, yeah. So the Araterra Blue, a little bit heavier dead weight than the blue board. Really interesting from a construction point of view, the Arretera, the way they've layered, interwoven the linear core, bias core, rather than just one block of each on top of one another. So actually, in principle, a little bit smoother from an energy transfer point of view. Definitely seen, yeah, thank you. Definitely seen, thank you very much, what was I going to say? The Arreteras, we've seen a little bit of gain in club speed, actually, every now and then out of them, which has been quite interesting, which didn't expect to see. But quite a smooth feel. So let's get this on here. Right. And all my gubbins to switch these together. So I'm just going to do this in neutral setting. Right, so, okay, so around the D1 and a bit. So blue board is very much sort of stable tip, stable grip end, very smooth profile, little bit of kick through the middle, but say quite a stable bottom end. Triple Diamond Max, the Quantums this year, I've actually been surprised at how low spin they are. So, whereas Callaway have always been pretty low spin with the drivers, they've always launched a little bit more. These ones tend to come out quite flat and forwards. So, right, let's see what we do here. So the one thing with the Callaway heads, with the composite on the back of the head, it's a little bit of a duller sound. So that one's just stayed right. These are definitely kind of neutral to almost a slight fade bass. Just stayed a little bit outright. So, 2000 spin, 2046. So, pretty strong for a max head in the 9 degree. You definitely get with the blue board, I'll give one more hit, you can feel the middle section kick. For a shaft that's actually very stable, almost sort of feels the impact, very low torque, and it is stiff tip, you can feel that midsection give you a bit back. But really holds on tight at impact. So, but it's not a hard shaft to swing. It's actually, so it's relatively light, down at just over 60 grams for that weight category. So what have we got there? Yeah, 2140. So yeah, not too bad. Still pretty strong, considering there's a lower spin head than that can really bring that that spin down. The Max, certainly if you tend to miss, I miss a little bit out of the heel. Generally speaking, the Callaways are generally very good for that. If you're a little bit toey, then the Quantums this year have tended to be a little bit knuckly. So Arretera pickup's a little bit heavier. You can definitely feel that under the grip end. It's a little bit more kind of heft to swing against. Neither's overly tip heavy, quite kind of neutral balance point. So you can definitely feel that sort of upper midsection is a little bit more stout. It's a little bit more Tellurian. Again, it's not a harsh shaft. These are just the stiffs in both shafts. You do feel like you get a little bit back out of it, but it's more through that mid to lower section. That upper mid hangs on a little tighter, whereas the blue board, you feel that midsection really give through. So that one I got a little higher on the face, and this is the one thing with these heads to be careful of, 1547 revs. It's got that little kind of nosedive to it. So if you mishit them a bit higher, a bit toey, it can be a bit volatile. Slightly more solid hit, maybe drag that over a little bit. But, it's still, they're both quite crisp, tight shafts. This one, you feel like it's the lower third just giving a little bit of a pop with that upper section a little bit more tight. The blue board, more kick through the middle, but that bottom end really hangs on. So the Arretera, I'm getting a noticeably lower spin, 1870 revs. Now, shot pattern, I've got the face closing a little bit more with that as well. But slightly heavier in terms of dead weight, definitely more stout in the upper half. Hope that helps. But yeah, they're very different feel, the Callaways. Not everyone's like the feel of those because of that composite layer behind the face. Just giving Mark a nod. They're very much, they can feel a bit dull. It can be quite hard to feel the strike point quite as much. So that's probably about the only critique of those heads in particular. But being decent for ball speed, but they're definitely a flatter flight profile than Callaway have been in the past from a launch angle point of view. Hope that helps. Now let's find our way. Andy Corso, the new Mitsubishi Tensei shafts as supplied in the GTS drivers. Can you talk about the differences with the previous models? Many thanks. So ultimately, there's not an awful lot of change. With any of the Tensei series, where they go from the AV to the 1K Blue to the, trying to think what the current version in there is. Oh, it's the 1K, I think. 1K in there. Ultimately, the profile stays the same. They just update materials, each model change. So Titleist in the past have used the SFT, the straight flight tech, which is essentially a bit of a counterbalance. And so with the current versions, the platform is the same. It's just new materials. So where they've developed them out in the aftermarkets, in the 1K Pros and in their kind of top line shafts, they'll bring some of those materials in, or it's a testing ground actually for other shafts as well. They're kind of entry-level ones. They're using Tensei's becoming a range which is going to be much more experimental. They're going to try and go there a little bit more with different materials, different different applications of those materials. So, but in the stock stuff, they don't really change very much. In their entry-level stuff, they're not going to really go there and massively change it. Partly, any of the stock products are essentially a way of funding a load of stuff that they do elsewhere within the company. They sell hundreds of thousands of units, and they're going to make them as simple as possible. So unless it's a complete model change away from a Tensei Blue in the AV, in the X-Link, in the 1K, it's still a Tensei Blue profile. It's a bit like the Diamanas. They update the materials every now and then, but the platforms and the bend profiles are the same. So it's pretty much a rinse and repeat, being straight. Mr. Calvo 90. Actually, one quick question. Are you joining us or are you? Yeah, please. Yeah. So we have one of our other fitters joining us, but I'll let him get his mic on before I say anything to him. Mr. Calvo 90, good evening to you. When you fit players into mini drivers, what is usually the next longest club you fit them next to? 5-wood, 7-wood, or 3 hybrid? Any recommendations? Now, when Mark is all mic'd up, I'll bring him in on this conversation. It's an interesting one in that it depends what you're using that mini driver for. Oh, he hasn't got a fluffy bit on.
I deserve a fluffy bit.
You definitely deserve the rabbit tail. So, mini drivers. I would say we're generally using mini drivers for someone who's a long hitter who doesn't really use a 3-wood as a fairway wood, and it's more of a strategy call off the tee.
Yeah.
So for me, it's normally going to be a lofted wood or a hybrid or a driving iron, depending on what that job role is they're looking for. When you're putting a mini driver in, what purpose are you using it for?
I think there's two main categories of player. It's one you already mentioned, the guys with speed, looking for alternative, particularly if you've got an elite player playing various courses, find something a bit on the narrow side, want a bit more faith.
Like that course in India they played on the DP.
Exactly, and everyone was out with them. Everyone was out of them. So you'd probably say that's one criteria for the elite player, reining it in. Obviously, the length is a significant drop in length on the shaft. The other player is the guys just wanting to find fairways at lesser speed, real confidence crisis with the drivers. There's that category of player as well.
So I guess for that player, you probably, if you're using it as a shorter shaft, if someone kind of traps it and the smaller head and the mini driver works better for that purpose, you're probably in a lofted wood.
Yeah,
probably. So kind of similar to the one using it as a 3-wood replacement. That you're looking for a different shot type out of the mini drive for each, but the next club is probably a similar kind of thing. Yeah.
You get guys who are very trappy and they're falling into higher lofted fairway woods anyway. Probably say the mini's a good fit for a guy who's trappy, at a lesser speed, often get great numbers off their fairway woods where I never seem to hit my driver further. There's something to be gained in that. But the guys who are that way tend to fall into more loft throughout anyway.
I think what you can see from this is that it's very player specific in terms of depending on why you're in a mini driver, and then the kind of course you're playing and the shots you're then looking for behind that. Ultimately, that's going to dictate a lot of what you use next. But it could be a driving iron, it could be a hybrid. It's probably not the driving iron, unless you're really kind of long player and you're playing either on a links course or really short and tight and it's something off the tee. But it's more than likely a hybrid or a lofted wood, I think, would be the rounded answer to that.
I mean, the guys out on the tours, the very elite, they might even have it as a, they're that good at a ball striking, playing huge, vast golf courses, new dimension off the ground, off the fairway. Yeah. But that's a pretty rare breed. Yeah.
Probably not for most of us. Stephen Johnson, thanks for that, Mark. Hi, Simon. What are the differences between TPT shafts? High versus low model. Is one more tip heavy, and what compare for a cheaper price? Thank you. So the high to low in both the nitro range and the power range, the low is more tip heavy, more tip stiff, and the high is mid to high, but it's not counterbalance, but a kind of an upper mid balance, and there's a little bit more response in the tip section. And that transfers across all their models, driver, fairway, hybrid, that's the same. Comparable models for a cheaper price. So I would say, the high is almost an easy one because it's a very smooth, very even weighted, responsive shaft. I mean, the ones that
HL Max, KBS Max, HL Max.
Yeah, and the lighter weights. I really like that. Yeah. The KBS. If you're looking at the lighter end of the spectrum, the Max HL, and you get lots of colour options there as well.
Yeah. Everyone likes the petrol finish.
The rainbow finish. Yeah, that is the most popular one. The one that springs to mind in more the mid weights would be Mitsubishi C6 as a. It's still a solid shaft, but certainly at the kind of lower end price point, that's definitely going to fall into that bit. And then, let's see, we're both looking at the shaft, we're all thinking. I think if you're looking for a less dear alternative, then you're straight into those couple there. I would say the nitro range is a different beast because that's structurally tighter and firmer. That's the power range. The nitro, it is a lower torque, structurally tighter version. I mean, less dear than that, then you do have your Deer Armadas and things. I mean, the nitros are up there at kind of 600 odd pounds, so you can find a lot of things less dear than that.
Yeah, there's other alternatives at the same price. Obviously, we've now got the Deramaxes and
it's very true.
And you got the Autoflexes.
I would say that the low shafts are actually really quite a stout feel.
I'd have to say,
Toy DVF is a similar kind of price.
The high is always my go-to for the person coming through the door, wanting speed, wanting ease of use. Yeah, I think the high is our predominant sale.
But what would that be fair to the low? I would say lower price point comparing to the low. If you're looking at lower price point, you could look at something like the Open Devotion. It's not quite the same, but it's not a million miles off. It's not quite as tip stiff and tip heavy, but it's still a lot of shaft for the money.
Yeah, lightweight, we always used to do very well on the 45 gram for people.
That's certainly a good option. Fujikura, the Pro Black. That I would put, it's not low price point. It's in that kind of 200 odd pounds, just over 200, 225 pound mark. Yeah. But it's still about 2/3 of the TPT. But I think that there's a bit of tip balance, there's a bit of stability. That punches above its weight, I think, from a performance point of view. Simon Jones, hi Simon, what's your opinion on the MMT graphite shafts? I play 85 gram stiff steel shafts, thinking of switching to graphite as I feel the graphite will be more stable and tighten my dispersion.
I've tried these in trial and they're incredibly stout feeling. Yeah. If you're looking for something like let's dampen vibration, let's soften up the strike, I think you need to look elsewhere, in my view, because when I've tried it, even at what was an 85 gram cap, really felt boardy.
I think they are. I mean, a lot of the shafts, you take the MMT, you take the Axioms, You take actually some of the graphite designs, the Tour ADs, they can get actually, when you're at the 85, 95, 105, they can get quite hard feeling because of the amount of graphite there. MMT for me is very tip heavy. It's it's one of the most tip balanced shafts that I've ever swung relative to weight. And I think that's part of where, like you say about the firmness of it, I think that feeds into it as well. So yes, the weight will match well.
It felt to me quite butt stiff as well. It felt quite under the handle. Yeah. Not the feeling I was looking for. I prefer, me personally, I've always erred on something that felt in the irons. I mean, the shafts I've liked in the past, like Nippon NS Pro 1050s and quite a smooth feeling. I
think that's probably with some of the graphites in those heavier weights, actually maintaining the feel is quite hard. I think the graphite design in the Rorne is pretty good for that. They are stable, but they're not overly harsh. I think that's something that's quite an interesting shaft. But yeah, I'd say MMT is going to swing at least, if not more, tip heavy. But you are going to get a lot of structural rigidity there. It might be worth looking at the steel fibre in the I-80 constant weight as well. That'd certainly be another one to have a look at if you don't want it to swing quite as tip heavy as that. Noel 1988, I have the Callaway Elite X. When hit out of the toe, it falls out of the sky. Does the spin drop off that much from toe strikes? Answer is yes, it can do. Callaways have always been that way, and quite frankly, for a toe striker. I mean, you were at Callaway years back as well. I always say they were really good heel strikers, club head, especially into the triple diamonds and things. But yeah, I think most of the Callaways have been pretty. I mean, the Elite, I think, is actually the standard version where you could move the weight heel and toe. I thought that was one of the safer ones they've had. But yeah, toe strikes really can knuckle it.
Yeah, never been there, done it. The Optiforce driver, funny enough, was the only driver I ever got on with. Yeah, I actually damaged it. I say damaged it. It cracked. There was a crack forming. Yeah. So Alan, who was in charge of specials at Callaway at the time, said, what do we do about this? And he said, I'll offer you whatever model it was. And I said, well, I don't like the shape of that. And I'm like that. So the only one that was
nobody likes
the Alpha.
Okay, Big Brother Alpha, yeah.
God. I mean,
Mark is not the highest spin player in the world at the best of times.
No. No, I'm naturally good at keeping spin down. You know, there's always like 3 or 4 degree up on the angle attack, and from the inside is my move. I don't fight for spin. I always want something moderate.
So you're still in a ping?
Still in a 400 ST.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the driver let me down, but I was in the Hampshire Seniors last week and got a bit smelly into the wind on those closing holes there.
Hailing Island?
Hailing Island, but still would say it's been really good to me.
Yeah. But again, that's the kind of head where if you're looking for something safe out of the toe side, the pings are certainly a way to go. Yeah. There are certain brands that have always been better out of or safer out of certain parts of the club head. I'd say Callaway's great at retaining ball speed and not flaring spin out the heel. Yeah. Knuckleball out the toe.
Yeah.
Pings, spin it a bit more out the heel, safer spin out the toe. So there will be heads that will be better than that for a toe strike.
I think that's probably why I love ping drivers, because I can catch them out of toe and they still go straight for me.
So Golf Node 3, my driver ball speed's around 165 to 170. That's better than mine. Would you find it odd that my clubs are mid to high C swing weights, only get to D wedges? I see most people with similar speed play much heavier. Not odd, no. Some players just don't suit a heavier swing weight. You can be very fast and play a light swing weight. You can be on the slower side and play a stronger swing weight. It just depends on how you move and what suits your timing. So, you know what? If it works, if you can centre strike, if you can control a club face, ultimately, just got to work. Swing weight is not something to govern your setup by. It's the result of getting all the other bits right. So the thing to remember with swing weight, it's a static balance on a fixed fulcrum that takes it doesn't take any account of what your components are, what grip you're using, what shaft, what head, what length. So what swing weight means is only representative to those components built at the length that they are. And, a swing weight point's 2 grams on the head. So it's, a shaft can make a 3 or 4 swing weight point difference if you go counterbalance to tip heavy. So don't worry if it's not a vertical commas normal number.
I think the action
just as long as it works for you. Yeah.
Someone who's a later hitter against someone who wants to keep it more in front of them, I think the swing weight can have an impact or creating the right feel for whatever method.
Yeah. But yeah, I wouldn't say worry. Scott Stanley, hi, love the show, thank you very much. What are your thoughts, I'll ask Mark this one, what are your thoughts on the Oban CT125? I recently got fitted into these X-Flex, hard step once and love them. My old set had AMT silver and the difference feels huge.
Well, if you look at the Oban CTs across all the weights, they're generally a very smooth shaft, typically Japanese, seamless design. We've had success across the board, depends on what weight requirement it is, but tend to be, as a balance of steel shaft, slightly higher. Yeah, that's what you probably would say as a range.
Would use them to try and keep that balance point up a little bit.
Just a very, very nice range of shafts. Very, very high quality, very well
very
made.
tight tolerance, I would say the 125s, I don't use those as much as I do the lighter weights, because at that dead weight, you're generally, it's someone with a more aggressive move and you might use a slightly more tip-heavy shaft.
You're always going to...
Having said that, it's not dissimilar to a dollar taper in terms of balance point or KBS tour. I think I play the 115s in those. I don't think I've ever played a set that has a more consistent pitch of flight through the set. So obviously they're going to be higher and lower, but it's not like the short irons flare up and then you struggle to launch them. I think you get some liveliness out of the shaft. They're not a dead shaft, but they're really stable for flight through the set, I would say.
think the other attribute, you always seem to see really good efficiency ball speeds with certainly in the 100s and the 115s. People,
true.
From what they're coming from, you do get people getting ball speed.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. There's good efficiency out of them. Actually, like we were saying with the Arateras earlier, where Matt and I, when we first tested, saw a bit more club speed out of them. Actually, ball speed from the CTs generally very strong. No, that's a good shout. Andy B764, glad to have you back. Thank you very much. Question about the SureFit hosel. When adding or taking loft off wood heads, SureFit's the Titleist system. When adding or taking loft off wood heads, would this affect face angle, i.e. open or closing the face? Thanks and keep upon the great work. Thank you very much indeed. There is a little bit, because of the fact that the shaft goes in at an angle, the moment you change loft, you are going to change face angle very slightly.
It's always often misinterpreted by the golfing public. So, surely if you're adding loft, you're making the face open. No, it's the absolute opposite. You've got to remember to demonstrate.
Grab a head,
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a head here, what is static is the relationship between that face and that sole. That's never going to change. So the moment you've got something here that's adjusting that, we're bringing that up. That is now the low point. So that, in stabilising itself, it's going to want to do that.
Well, that effectively makes a double effect, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because if you're adding loft as well, you're bringing that forward, but you can't just hinge it that way. It's got to come up because of the angle of the shaft. It's got to come round a little bit as well.
So working opposite to that, we're taking loft off of this there. What we're now doing is making that higher.
Turn that around.
So probably better there. So if that's less loft, the sleeve is creating less loft. This is now raised. So now, in finding its stable position, that's its address position. But that's never going to change. That relationship don't change. So therefore, there's always a knock-on effect in terms of face angle at address.
That was one of those things that made me laugh a couple of years back when Cobra claimed that the sole shape meant that the face, no matter what you did with the hosel setting, meant that it was always square. Bollocks. It's physically impossible.
Well, I reckon TaylorMade touched on something however many years ago now. When did they bring out R1? Was that about 2012? Is that a guess?
12, because 9 was 2009, then had R11, then...
So the thing that looked like a compass on the sole, they were clever there, but no one grasped what it should do.
Yeah.
But what it was doing, but you remember the three positions in the original TaylorMade sleeve, the Yes-It, and then you had the sole plate, which was a triangular effect.
Yeah.
So you could actually create the loft you wanted, but gain the face angle you wanted at the same time, which was brilliant. And then it got really involved with that thing that looked like a compass on, I think, the R1. Do you remember it?
Oh, yeah.
With the fancy colours on the crown and all that. But in terms of giving you the loft you want and the face angle independently, but whether it was just because it became too involved.
I think the problem is how it sits on the sole then affects loft on top of it as well. And we see it with, there are certain heads, like this year, the TaylorMade, the QI4D Max is a very flat sole, so it really seats very, very clearly. Where Titleist have improved their aerodynamics, they've lifted the back edge, and the club wants to sit on its haunches. I had it with my RBZ Tour, my M4. The back edge was raised, it sat open. Suited me because I hook it as a miss. But yeah, and so actually what they do with the sole shape has a massive effect on how that club seats.
What was the classic TaylorMade from around about 8 years ago? Not M2. Was it M? One of the latter ones, following M2s.
There was M2 2016.
Do you remember it had very little width in the sole and it was all swept back, but we always had to loft it up to give someone a face angle.
Oh, that was the M4.
Yes.
Yeah, which I was fine with because I liked seeing it open. Yeah, but it had aerodynamically was very good, but it had a really high back. Yeah. So it's all clubs with a flatter sole are much easier to kind of find their position and to kind of stay sitting square. But if you're going for something aerodynamically efficient, then chances are it's going to want to sit open. Went slightly off piece there, but yeah. Alistair Mack, hi Simon. How much impact can shafts have on ball flight? I hit the ball incredibly high, which is great when there's no wind, but into wind I have no chance. Is there any benefit in getting this checked? The answer is yes, there's a benefit, but almost for the question we had earlier, you're not going to suddenly find, because of the way it bends, that one shaft hits it there and the other knocks it down 3 degrees and takes 1,000 revs of spin off. It's just not going to happen.
No.
If a shaft allows you to time it and therefore deliver less loft because of the weight dynamics and the balance point, it can do it indirectly, but you just need to play a stronger loft, lower spin ball, lower spin heads, something like a Strixon, great iron head, ZXi7 for example.
In technical terms, what that person also needs to do is get their hands on TrackMan numbers, delivery of, angle of attack, dynamic loft. Yep. How much is it down to you, and how much can you make impact on that? Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah. As a player, you are using loft, a head that can bring launch angle down a little bit, but ultimately, if you're really trying to see a significantly, it depends on what you're playing at the moment, I guess, but if you're trying to see a significantly improved launch angle, ultimately, technique. It is, if you're someone who picks it and adds loft, there's not a head in the world that's going to give you a orthodox set of flight numbers. You're always going to launch it on the higher side unless you get covered and get that shaft lean and deliver less loft. There's only so much that the clubs can do in that respect. Yeah. But they can help.
As a fitter, moving on from that or extending out the argument is that where you get someone with that technique and move them into stronger specs and so forth to curtail it, what you have to be very cautious of is changing technique changes the spec on the clubs.
Yeah.
And that's where you've always got to have that discussion to say, where do you want you to take your game? Because you can lead someone down a blind alley as such by giving them something that's too strong long term.
That's true. Yeah, irons at least are easier to adjust back up. Driver, you can get it horribly wrong by
you can,
knuckling spin, and then you change your delivery and then it's too low. So Now we've got 15 minutes or so we're going to crack. We've got a load of questions. We're going to crack through some. So, Simon Langford, good evening, Simon. On my recommendation, my mate has a PXG iron fitting at a local driving range. What are the two most important TrackMan numbers when deciding whether to change? Now, So consistency of ball speed, however, depending on where that launch and spin sits. So I have been to leading brands' facilities where they don't have measured spin on show. It's a TrackMan and it's an Italic. And they claim it's measured spin, it's just not. It isn't. And so you could get a completely wrong idea of what your ball flight is if you're not getting actual spin data. But if you're getting consistently more ball speed efficiency on a consistent ball flight, that 100%, that's got to be a good thing. Two most important TrackMan numbers. Yeah, I mean, you don't say just ball. I mean, ball speed is important because that's just. Yeah, make sure there's no dodgy altitude settings.
Yeah.
Thank you, James. Yeah.
I don't think you can put it down to two numbers.
Yeah.
If you said to me what two numbers are the best, well, obviously, ball speed is significant as a change. But you can't, like you said, you can't see it. Take away spin numbers, well, it's irrelevant potentially.
Yeah. There's no point pitching it on a green and then seeing it far through the back.
Yeah, you could say launch and spin, but at what's ball speed? So you can't. I think it's more than two numbers.
I think ultimately make sure that you're getting a balance of flight control, looking at land angle numbers. Make sure that fitter talks about what the ball's doing when it lands. But obviously, if you can gain ball speed and keep control.
All right, I'm going to break it down to two numbers, or two categories. I'm going to say, if you've gained good ball speed, then range of spin and tightness of range of spin is key.
Yeah.
Because the variability in spin is the variability of carry and so forth.
Yeah.
If you control spin numbers with a healthy ball speed, you're getting in the right direction. Is that fair to say?
Completely agree.
Yeah?
Yeah, that dispersion pattern, that's a really massive one, Nick KSO, hey Simon, want to get your thoughts on the Russ Ryden / devoted golfer golf shaft methering methodology, database and reviews. He mentions three main shaft profiles: mid-soft, mid-stiff, mid-extra soft. Measuring golf shafts, there are many different ways of measuring them. The problem is there is no industry standard. So in terms of measuring shafts and profiles, well, what are you actually kind of measuring? What is your baseline? So what is soft, stiff, extra? It's all pretty subjective. I think unless you've got access to something like the S3 database, where there've been.
I was going to mention it anyway.
James got on his whiteboard very quickly there. Quite correctly though. I think unless you've got someone which is essentially creating a standardized set of measurements for, might be CPM, regional stiffness, EI profiles. If you're looking at the structure of shafts, that's the only way you can really go into the depths of detail. Ultimately then, if it's more experiential and how do they play, well then you still need to understand the bend profiles and what the design of the shaft is, but ultimately you're looking at dead weight and then how does it swing. But it's very hard to make direct comparisons across the different brands because they all measure things differently. Like CPM and frequency actually has far less impact on how the shaft plays than we used to think. But dead weight, balance point have a much bigger effect on it and how it works for someone or not.
I think it goes back to what you said about not changing flight profile too much when that guy said about hitting it high. It's a subtlety, but getting weight right and profile right is the key. Yeah. And until you try these things, you on what is on paper.
Oh yeah, well, in theory, is a great shaft. Could in practice be a stinker?
Exactly.
So it's always going to create a lot of debate because it's actually very hard to quantify. You can quantify what is structurally different, but you can't quantify how it's going to play differently for each individual player. And that's why there's all this debate about shafts and things. And even doing these tests here, how do they feel, how they perform? Well, how I experience the feel of the shafts is going to be different than you might do because we all load them differently. So I might feel something that you might not get because you load the handle differently. So it's very hard because it's very subjective ultimately, which is why there is no definitive guide ultimately. I hope that answered it as well. ZB_Rogan, good evening. Any chance of some Mark Fitz episodes? Love the long video of Gary Wolstenholme and him. Not if he can help it, I think is the answer. No. What Mark brings to the table is more experience than anyone I know in industry. You know, in terms of, I think that's something where I'm, you know, not shy of it at 21 years doing this, but you've been doing it for.
Well, my first job in golf was in the late 80s. Not really, I mean, talk about fitting, it wasn't really fitting. It was standing on the range prior to any launch monitors and just watching ball flight. But in essence, I suppose you'd say 25 years using a form of launch monitor.
That's because they've only been around 25
exactly.
years.
yeah, that's it. And that was
your eyes are the
and
launch
that was
before.
very rudimentary.
Yeah.
That was the Vector, the old Vector, and that used to be pretty spurious.
Yeah,
but it was the first attempt.
Numbers, yeah. They're still better. They're still better than what we had. There was still data that could be used. I think that's the thing is that I guess when you've got the level of experience that you have, it's the amount of things that you've seen before. And I think that's ultimately no one's ever going to have seen everything.
I think the difference with me, it's probably observation plays a bigger part. You know, Phil said, how do you know when you see a shot, you've already know it's a good number?
Yeah.
Because you've seen it before.
Yeah.
You've heard
a strike. Yeah.
You see the delivery of the face, everything looks neutral, you know? That's, I suppose, the element what comes with experience is observation, not just about numbers.
Yeah.
And interpretation.
True.
A lot of it is instinct, thinking outside the box.
But it's interpreting
how can we solve this?
Every player describes things differently and might have a different kind of way of putting these across. So it's actually understanding the language that player use, delving into where they play, what they need, what kind of shots they're trying to hit, and that
asking the right questions.
Experience-led role. Yeah. Right.
Did we answer that, by the way?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. Oh well, I think the answer is. It might be a while, but we'll see what we can persuade him with. Alistair Mack, apologies, was referring to hybrids and fairway woods on the high ball flight. Head style will do more for you than shaft roll on that. So look at head style in particular. There are some heads that will definitely bring launch and spin down and get the ball coming down and forwards a lot more. I mean, you look at the TaylorMade head's pretty strong head this year. The pings launch pretty well, but they're low spin. Generally hybrids, it's not that hard to find one that brings the flight down. So look at head style first for that. Right, I'm going to crack through these because we've got lots of questions. We've got about 5-10 minutes. If I can get the screen to move. Ian Linfoot, I'm using a face bounce putter with a mid-size grip. My miss tendency is right. Could a change to a Scotty Newport with a thinner grip help prevent the right miss? You've done more putting than me. I think the answer is definitely maybe.
Well,
but in theory, the face bounce putter should help the toe come through. In theory,
and it's interesting what Koepka had to say about his putter. Actually, they quizzed him on his.
Oh, because he wanted that mallet.
Yeah, but he said that even though it's a mallet, his CG is fairly forward compared to other mallets.
True. Yeah.
And he said that he wanted toe hang, and he said he was fighting the release of the head, and although it's a mallet, he wanted weight forward.
Yeah. So it swings more like the blade.
Yeah.
But so that might be what you're finding.
But what you'll find,
that can open the face of
just because you've got a head that on paper has got a bigger MOI, it doesn't mean it's about face angles. For putting, it's all about face angles. Yeah, striking it out in the middle, but you mustn't. It's not like. I must use a face balance. I heard they're better square to square. No. Where's your face angles? What are you doing on a regular basis at impact? The perfect example of that is Steve Stricker. Yeah. Using a blade putter with a very, very upright shaft.
Very toe down,
very toe down, and yet absolutely phenomenal on face angle, and so Steve, you're not using the right putter. Well, you look at my stats and tell me anything otherwise. people said, I need a face balance. What is giving good face angle, and what things like length and balance, what's creating good strike?
I mean, it could be ultimately
launch and spin.
Missed tendency could be an aim issue. Might be nothing to do with the putter or the stroke. Could be your aiming there.
Yeah. So I think when you fit in people, it falls down to not being led by the generalisations that go on out there. It's trying things to create good set of face angles. That's what Qi10's so good. In terms of ball launch, spin rates, you can have a good set of face angles, but the flight of the ball, I don't say flight, you might be only carrying half an inch, whatever, but it's getting the launch and spin in the right place that builds that consistency level up.
Yeah.
So I know it's not talking about face balance putters there, but I think what you've got to say is that when you fit in a putter, good set of face angles with good launch conditions is how I fit.
Yeah. And then how do you aim?
And how do you aim?
Fairly central, me again, when you mentioned the off-centre strikes would be better, can that be quantified, even if estimated 5, 10, 20 yards? Consistency of flight. I think if you're toe striking at knuckles, you can lose 10, 15 yards of carry. It then runs out, but there is more gearing off-centre as well. If you heel strike it and you gain 1,000 revs of spin, then you're going to lose 20-odd yards potentially in terms of distance. So can it be estimated? I would say off-centre performance, I think, relative to, if I'm right, you were saying it was a TS3, I think off-centre you could see over 10 yards gain, average distance gain, with the current heads now, might be slightly more. Out the middle, I don't think you'll see much at all, assuming flight's in a good spot. But I think the tolerance, for want of a better phrase, the discrepancy on distance that you're going to see on an off-centre strike, that's gonna get way closer. But it depends on how far you hit it as to how much that's likely to be. So, but I think you should see 10 yards plus gain off-centre, I would say, from the current heads versus the TS. Golf Nerd 3 play DM on a blue board 43X, 63S in the 5 and 7 wood, and 73S in the 9 wood. Sad there isn't a DM on a blue board hybrid. Is the Tensei 1K Pro HB or Blue HB similar, or would you suggest something else? Old models are welcome too. Well, the Tensei Blues are only actually are mainly available kind of in stock options. The 1K series are only really in the white, which is a higher balance profile. I would say actually if you go back there, the old Tensei Pro was a really nice hybrid shaft, the old Tensei Pro Blue going back about 5 or 6 years. That was a lovely shaft, very smooth. So if you can find one of those, the Pro Blue, that would have been Titleist would have been the brand you'd have seen those in most. That was a lovely smooth one. That would work well alongside those shafts, I would say. Nick Kerso, could you hit the 442 and 3 hybrid and 3 wood and at your normal speed and compare? Just because of the time and the amount of questions I want to get through, I won't do that now. But if you can get in early next week, get in early and ask that, I will do that next week. Golf Nerd 3, which modern day players' irons have a more true centre sweet spot? I find too many players' irons have heel bar CG. The answer is actually the heel bar CGs because they are players' irons. So you haven't got loads of weight in the toe and the hosel weighs a lot. So the CG of the head sits on the heel side. So
restrictions?
I still think they're a little bit in the heels. I mean, I-240 you're going to find a little bit more centred because of that tungsten toe weight. Yeah. You're not going to find many, not that are proper kind of players' irons. I think the T100Rs still have quite a lot of tungsten in the toe. Yeah. But ultimately, anything that's not game improvement, you're going to find it on the inside of the face. If there's a decent bit of tungsten in the toe, go to one of those heads. But so pings potentially are one of those that will be better, I would say. But otherwise, there's not enough tech to shift the CG enough. B Babbins 45. That's just jumped. Where's it gone to? Some people talk about building a driver that doesn't go right because they can fix the left miss more easily. Can you talk about what this means when building the club? I mean, building a bias into a club, look, the swing's going to override anything the club does. realistically. You can build in some bias by using heads that are more toe weighted, by heads that sit open. If you're building a right bias, heads that sit open. You can potentially do something with the balance setup based on the player's tendencies that will help to leave the face open a little bit.
Yeah.
But you can't anti-left a club completely. Any player can get the face closing if that's their miss. Like, I've got a left miss. You could build me, well, I can't get a club that sits 5 degrees open, but ultimately that would be your only way, and they don't really exist. You can anti-right one more easily because there are more brands out there with heel bias closed heads.
Right.
But
changing start point, lie angle.
Yeah.
But there's a few fixes or things to try, but ultimately
it is fine-tuned. You're not going to eliminate it completely, or if you do, you've probably gone to something that extreme. The club won't work particularly efficiently anyway. So
and it relates to strike point.
I'd be careful about over pushing that, but you can move CG in the heads. You can de-loft to open faces. You can do those sorts of things for sure.
Tricks, yeah.
Right, let's see how many we can get through these. Japandi Jones Golf, long-time watcher, first-time chatter. Well, thank you for joining in. Do you have top three blades for 26? We've got a 93 mile-an-hour swing speed on a 7-iron. As far as current CBs don't spin enough, and a high-lofted 7-iron 34 player draw KBS X stiff mid-size grip. From a spin point of view, I would say the Mizunos are a solid one for that. They retain a little bit of spin. Actually, the Cobra MB, that's a little bit of extra launch and spin from what I've seen with it. The Artisans retain a little bit of spin, but they're quite head heavy. It's hard to make a low spin blade. Strixon have done it, but most of the others you're going to find retain a decent bit of spin. But I would say...
And this guy's saying he's got not enough spin off his CVs.
Current CBs don't spin enough and are high lofted. So, the draw is kind of what does it as well, but I think the Cobra would be the one I'd go to. Of any of them. I've not known one to be massively different on spin though, so... Right.
We're normally fighting, the task is normally the other end, and it's normally containing spin with those sort of speeds, but that's where it's quite unusual. That.
And there's a comment about being in the same boat as Golf Nerd 3 and same speeds and tinkering with D3, D4 on the driver. That's a swing weight one. Right, Little Big 73. I've been struggling with driver, essentially anything on a tee. Do well with fairway woods. Going to try a mini driver, but shorter than standard. Is there a recommended limit to how short? They're generally 43 3/4 as standard. You could probably get it down to 43 without having to whack too much weight into it. I probably wouldn't take it too much further than that.
Depends on where the spec of the primary fairway wood, where the spec of length is on that as well. You'd probably want a little bit more on it than you would the longest fairway.
Probably, but I think you could probably get away with getting down to 43 as long as you've got extra weights that you can put in to manage the balance of the club at that length.
It's going to feel shorter purely because you're dealing with a bigger head at a 3-wood length. It'll feel shorter.
Yeah, and
it's a little bit psychological.
The one I've been impressed with this year has been the Cobra.
That's been good.
Martin Williams, high player, elite 3-wood, 15-degree down one at 42.5 length and a 3HL 16.5 lofted up to 42 inches long, both D2.5 weights. How should I set up a 7-wood to gap well? They go about 215 and 200. Well, 7-wood, if you're 15-degree down one, 14, 17, 7-wood standard should work pretty well. I mean, actually, if you're an elite, you can't change it because it's fixed. Or in a Callaway because they are fixed at that loft. But actually, if you're at 15, let's say 15 down to 14, 16.5 at 18.5, 14. So because of where the spin profile amplifies up, you may well find that the standard loft, maybe if there was one notch up, but the standard loft, I think, should work pretty well with that. Kind of makes sense with the loft progression. Richard Skinner, great show. Can you make a recommendation on wedges? I'm looking for some buttery soft wedges for feel. Soft feel. I like the feel of the Artisans. I like the feel of the Mizunos. Actually, the TaylorMade's quite a soft feeling wedge.
Yeah.
Because they're raw in the face.
Yeah.
So
and they've actually, of all the mainstream American brands, they're forged this time around as well.
So I would say those
a slightly duller sound, because sound has an impact on perceptions of feel. So,
but I'd say the mine's gone completely blank. There was another one I was going to mention briefly.
Are you going to say 14?
I wasn't, but they are.
They are.
The 14s are soft.
They're nice.
You just might find those hard to come by.
But actually,
the Clevelands, the RT, the RTZs are pretty good.
Yeah, that's fair.
Especially in the raw, in the tour rack. But I actually think TaylorMade's are some of the softest feeling wedges out there.
Yeah, very noticeable when people are trialling them. How quite a
good grind,
quite a nice sound to it. Quite a nice soft sound to them.
So Japanese Jones Golf again, with graphite shafts starting to pop up in irons more. Do you see any blade KBS TGI combos? Any combos suggested? Getting TGI 110 shafts for free. Heard anyone fitting blades to them besides Avoda? You're less likely to find them in blades simply because there are fewer players playing blades now, but ultimately you're likely to find them in heavier weights in blades because it's likely to be a stronger player who's not looking for any extra ball speed. But you know what? Ultimately, we're doing more graphites than ever before. There are more graphites on offer, and players are more accepting of playing graphite as well, which tends to help. But you're more likely to see them in irons that have a bit of pop and a bit of kick because you're more likely to use the slightly lighter weights. So that's why you don't see them very often as a combo. But there's no reason they won't work. But ultimately, as long as the shaft works for the player and the head works for the player, as with always, that's the caveat really. Sully Sar 3266. Hello gents, how much distance will one lose by shortening the driver by an inch? Not necessarily very much. Depends where your starting point is. If you're 45 3/4, you might actually gain distance if the strike's better.
Yeah.
So
sort of how long's a piece of string? Because we've seen the effect both ways.
Yeah.
You give someone slightly shorter, they get into posture, they feel like they can cover it well and get good strike.
I mean, an inch. If the longer length is swinging well, then you wouldn't be shortening it, I guess. But if the longer length is swinging well and someone's getting a good result out of it, for an inch, you're probably going to lose about 2 to 3 miles an hour.
Yeah, I'd said a couple.
So 5 ball speed, so potentially 10 yards. But if you're hitting it way straighter, that 10 yards is worth it, ultimately, because in play means you can attack the course and it'll run out, and so you'll end up further up. So, but
I have seen people use shorter drivers and gain speed because their confidence levels, and once they start feeling strike and getting face angles, they relax.
It's a simpler move through.
Yeah.
Japanese Jones said Mizuno Pro T3. So the Mizuno, both the T1 T3 are forged. They're both good. Tractable Dave, sorry if I missed your question earlier. Let me just very quickly see. The screens have jumped around a little bit, so I may have. I can't see it, but let us know. Fire it over to us. Email it over to us, and I will either fire an answer over to you personally or jump on the first thing next week. Right, we've got a couple left. We'll fire through these. Paul Dunn, should and does my 4-iron shaft weigh less than my pitch iron shaft in a stock set? Yes, is the answer. It will be longer, which they could end up being very, very similar, but it should be a few grams less. Ultimately, as you go from 4-iron shaft, long iron to short iron, if they're a taper tip set of shafts, and that is the key, then there's a 1 and a bit gram progression in weight as you go down the set to make them a constant weight set. So could end up being very, very similar in weight, but the base weight of shaft is slightly lighter. Lee Roberts, if they're parallel, then your long iron will be heavier.
No, go in reverse.
So if they're a parallel set of shafts, they're the same base shaft and trim, so the short irons are lighter than the long irons, which is why we always prefer the taper tip. Lee Roberts, swing but feel as though these clubs are too heavy impacting your swing. Would you recommend a junior fit at that age? Swing but feel as though those clubs are too heavy impacting your swing. Ultimately, so the thing with junior fits is going that the question, if I interpret this right, adult clubs or junior clubs, we've seen it recently for a youngster who his friends are getting in. I think he was about 7 or 8. Some of his friends are going into adult clubs, but then putting a light shaft in. Ultimately, head weights are often too heavy at that age. So depending on how big the junior is, once they start to get kind of 5 foot plus, then chances are they're getting strong enough to use standard weight heads, or even the lighter weight end of standard weight heads. Less than that, chances are the lighter heads at the junior clubs, things like the US Kids, things do, they go 5-10% lighter. That makes a heck of a difference. So
if there was a first step into the mainstream heads, you would say that you've got to have brands that involve lighter head.
Yeah. So go too heavy too soon, it'll kill them. Right, Hanif J, I hit my 4 hybrid 185 with a strong flight, 5 wood 210 and driver 230, 240. Is that normal gapping? These are carry numbers. So not too bad. I would say there's maybe a little, your 5 wood, you're clearly flighting like a 3 wood, or like a kind of a stronger fairway wood. So that gap looks to work well. Is there a slightly big gap between the 4 hybrid and the 5 wood? Yeah, I'd probably want to see it more like 195 from a carry point of view. But obviously it depends what they're doing when they land as to where they end up. But yeah, I would say there's a bit more of a gap between the 5 wood and the 4 hybrid than I'd want there, about 10 yards or so. Brian McAllister at Nick Kerso, been following Russ Ryden for years, and he has the technology and does scientifically measure each shaft, so his interpretations of shaft profiles are independent and accurate. The Idle Mouse, hi Simon, my order should be ready this week. Can't wait. 3 weeks feels like a year. That it certainly does. And then final one, Japan D. Jones, in your opinion, why have we not seen a trend in 3D printed irons with the Cobra 3 series being rated very well, or are they coming? The answer is cost. It's just there's low volume, very high cost. So getting it out there at a cost that the consumer will pay, that is ultimately is the reason why. That's why more people haven't done it yet. At some point, I'm sure we'll see it, but if the cost's too high, they just won't do it. Thank you very much for all the questions. It's lovely to be back. Thank you very much to Mark for agreeing to join us.
No problem.
I hope it wasn't too bad. Always a pleasure to get your level of experience on here, and for everyone to see you. Obviously, some have seen the long form videos in the past, but great to have you on. Thank you for joining us. Another great week in golf coming up. We're getting ever closer to another major. Any of the questions you have, let us know. Check out all the fitting videos. I am having a putter fitting with Matt filmed tomorrow. That'll go live in in a week or two's time. So if you're interested in seeing that process, I'm not taking my putter in. I'm going to get fitted for what is right and see whether I've got even close to it. So check that one out on the channel soon. And if you haven't already subscribed, get on the channel and subscribe, and you'll get access to all the content we've published over the last few years. So thanks again for joining us. Have a great week of golf. It's raining here, but hopefully it's not where you are. And we'll see you again next Monday for the next live.
Bye for now.